Here is a collection of Sasquatch videos and stories from across the world. The creatures captured here appear to be absolutely enormous. I've heard of people running into them in the woods and describing them simply as beasts. Giants, 8 to 10 feet high, 4 feet wide, shoulder to shoulder. You be the judge. This video was captured in North America. It appears to show some type of massive creature with its back turned, using a tree as a back scratcher. Whatever this creature is has to be pushing 7 feet tall, 400 pounds, maybe more. I live near Lincoln, Illinois. Lincoln is pretty centrally located in central Illinois. It is 30 miles from the state capital, Springfield, 35 miles each from Bloomington. It has a population of about 12,000 people, 50 years old. But when I was a little boy of about 3 or 4, me and my family had an encounter with the Salt Creek Monster. If you live in central Illinois, that is pronounced crick, not creek. At that time, we lived out in the country, less than half a mile from Salt Creek. This was 2 miles outside an extremely small little village, Kenny, Illinois. My mother witnessed it cross the road right before the bridge that crossed Salt Creek. My brothers had been down there night fishing and placing out night lines. My mom drove down to the bridge to get the boys and told them to get back up to the house. It was almost 10 at night, and they weren't going to be allowed to stay out there all night. One of my brothers told my mom they had seen Bigfoot. Her, not believing them, told them, "Well, you two boys get in the car and come on home." They told her they had to gather their fishing poles and gear and to please wait while they got it, and they would walk back up to the house. She agreed and waited while they did that, and they started back down the road. One of my brothers was on foot and one on his bike. As they took off, she drove on toward the bridge, turned around on a little gravel drive right before the bridge. She had her driver's side window down. As she got to the drive, a horrible smell of garbage mixed with rotten sewage water practically smacked her in the face through the window. In the headlights, a 7-foot-tall, man-shaped thing crossed in the headlights from one side of the road to the other. It was light gray and completely hair-covered. It looked directly at the car as it passed by. She said she'll never forget those glowing yellow eyes. She said she had the hair on her arm's neck and head all stood on end, and she's never felt that scared scent. She turned into the drive on the right side of the road and slammed the gear shift into reverse, quickly doing a 3-point turn to go back away from the bridge and back up the road to the house. As she went toward the house, this thing was running down the road. It was a full moon that night. The boys had been looking back as they went to see where Mom was, and they saw this huge, muscular, man-shaped thing running in their direction. They later said they looked back because this thing must have weighed a lot because they felt it running on the paved country road before they saw it. My brother, that was on foot, was scared so bad he passed my other brother on his bicycle, and he was running. My mom was freaked out because it looked like it was going after the boys. She swerved over at the creature, and it jumped off the right side of the road, down 15 feet into the deep ditch, and let out a blood-curdling scream. Everyone got back up to the house, quickly got into the house, and locked all the doors and windows. They later said they could hear it walking around outside the house. It was thudding into the ground and breathing loudly as it went by windows. My sister and her best friend were sleeping out in a camper that fit into the bed of a pickup truck. They heard something walk up to the camper and circle it 5 or 6 times. They could hear deep, heavy breathing, and the dog that was scared of nothing was under the truck, whining and shivering. It slapped the side of the camper and rattled the doorknob. The 2 of those girls stayed completely still and even held their breath. They were trying to be so quiet after what seemed like forever, but in reality was probably 30, 40 seconds. Sometime later, they heard something off in the distance. In the same direction, they heard the thing that only moments before had been circling their camper, and it began roaring. This next clip was taken from a TV show in Europe. The farmer called investigators to check his property after a massive Sasquatch creature was captured on video days earlier. You can tell from the video this creature is absolutely enormous. We'll slow it down so you can take a deeper look. This story was first submitted to Sasquatch Chronicles. Jason writes, I've been asked about my experience with Sasquatch here in Missouri, so I'd like to share. Everything I say, I will gladly take a polygraph test to show I have nothing to hide. We bought a small cabin in Missouri in 2010. It sat between two hillsides with a creek at the foot of both hills. That creek ran downhill a winding 100 yards or so to a 2 acres pond. Across the dirt road adjacent to the pond was the river. Looking back, it was prime habitat, adding in the deer, turkey, and fish in the area. We first started hearing what sounded like rocks hitting the metal roof. I naturally assumed acorns or small branches. That was until I had to clean the chimney and the roof was littered with small rocks. I assumed kids messing with the new people. The rocks turned into thumps on the house, only to come immediately outside to see or hear nothing. This happened maybe twice a week for months. One evening I came out with the trash and noticed people coming up my driveway and several other people down the road. They said hi and were very nice on their approach. The conversation quickly turned to, did you happen to hear anyone hollering or moaning for help? I said I had not and asked more about what was going on. One of the ladies told me she was out on her deck around 8:30 and heard what sounded like someone moaning for help. The sheriff's department was on the way, and figuring maybe someone floating the river maybe got lost and hurt, I grabbed my light and hit the woods since I was a volunteer fireman. The sheriff's department drove around the Ridge Road loop and I met them. I explained I'd been through the woods and had seen nothing. Case closed with no one reported missing. I'm sure that with some digging, that could be verified. Several nights later, my wife comes in and says something is growling at me from the woods. Figuring coyotes or a stray dog, I grabbed my 12 guy and came out. I've been hunting and hiking all of my 44 years now, and I had never heard a sound like that. A deep, low, long growl you felt, followed by huffs. But trying to think logical, I said a brazen bear. This went on for months. Then there came the day we knew for sure it wasn't a bear. My wife and I were picking spinach in our garden boxes. The boxes were along the driveway being tucked back into the hills. It was really the only light we had to grow under. We were just talking and pulling spinach on a nice June day when something caught our eyes. It was a side view of an auburn-colored, easily 7 feet tall, having roughly 4 or 6 inches, long hair, shoulders roughly 36 to 48 inches wide, and a large head sitting on what seemed to be no neck. We caught it in the middle of turning away from us. It went down the hill to the creek. We heard one splash and it was gone. It was like time stopped, a million questions in seconds running through my mind. After the splash, it's like we both snapped out of our daze, and I took off running through the woods barefoot. I saw nothing. However, I did see a wife upon my return. They thought I'd lost my mind. I don't know what its intentions were being 30 feet away from us, but it just casually walked away. The same activity happened for another year without seeing it again. Logging company bought all the land and cut most of the woods down. It just wasn't the same anymore, and I figured activity would stop since the logging. So we bought a different property and moved. We still had the property for 1 more year until finally selling, probably 3 months before selling. I went back to get a few things. The hillsides were just piles of cut-down leftover tops. I guess I was standing around reminiscing when I noticed something large and black sitting in a pile of the tops. It stood out well, being the leaves were dead and light brown once I got my eyes focused in. On what I was seeing at around 40 or 50 yards, I was more shocked than the first time. Broad daylight, 2:30-ish in the afternoon, a very large hair-covered, black with a shine to it, grayish-faced and large black eyes. This one kept its head low and glared at me. This is Strange but True Stories, and it's been a pleasure.